Welcome to the Outstanding Women Leaders Podcast, or OWLS.
We give a hoot.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Kristen Aguirre, a former journalist turned young stroke survivor, now hustling to make my dream of becoming a national speaker come true. I'm currently jobless, but not loveless. I come from a big Latino family, and as I transition to a new career, I moved back home with my Mexican parents, which is amazing, but also terrifying. My family is the love of my life and my motivation every morning to wake up and hustle. I want to buy each one of us a house and pay off all of our student loans. Now I'm accompanied by my resilient and quirky co-host, Katie Eads. Also funny, she gets really upset when I don't say that. Now she's like a cat, has 9 lives when it comes to careers and relationships. Katie, really quick, introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. She's finally at episode 26, plus some bonuses. She's realized how funny I am.
I've always thought you were funny.
I know. As she mentioned, I'm a little quirky, a little hilarious. I'm also the founder of Owl Professional Coaching. And like a cat, I've landed on my feet a few times when it comes to careers and relationships, just like my girl Meg here, who's going to be on the show today. I'm a divorce thriver, toxic relationship survivor, and the queen of transitioning. After proclaiming 2020 my year, thanks Corona, you're not stopping me, I launched the Outstanding Women Leaders podcast with my girl, Kristen. Our vision is to connect with outstanding women leaders from around the world, share their story, and inspire you to give a hoot in your own community. Today, we hope that you get inspired to just share some of your superpowers, some of that authentic you with the world, and be your bold, brave, unique self. But enough about us. If you're ready to laugh, feel the presence of faith in your life, and hear the F-bomb a few times, then let's get started. Welcome, Meg.
Hey, I'm allowed to say that word?
Meg Fraizer is our guest today. I met her at CrossFit, so we've got that CrossFit connection here still. All three of us are former CrossFitters. Meg right now is working full-time as an artist. She's going back to school as a full-time student. She has a side hustle including writing, teaching art, and soon to be a podcaster. So welcome to that space. Meg is a Midwest girl from Ohio who made her way to Chicago to be a teacher and change the world, which I absolutely identify. Meg is full of passion, purpose. She's a great art teacher. Meg, welcome. Tell us about yourself. How did you make your way into Chicago by way of Jamaica, of all places, too, which is so cool?
Yeah, actually. So thank you. I feel very welcome already. I moved to Chicago about 13, 14 years ago after teaching in and out of Jamaica through my junior, senior year of college, and then transitioning back home, working in some after-school programs in Ohio, and then really just wanted to dive into inner city, diverse cultures, and really learn coming from a small town. It wasn't very diverse at all. So Jamaica kind of opened my eyes to third world, and then I transitioned into Chicago and started teaching about 6 months in.
Awesome. And you did a TED Talk on your experience in teaching, which was really awesome. People should check that out. We'll have the link available at the end of this episode for everyone in our post. But Meg, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like there?
Sure. So I taught on the south side of Chicago, mainly 99th and Street, and then 76th and Cicero, and then
69th and Pulaski.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh, then you're close.
Yeah.
We would have been in a little church around the corner there somewhere. So the majority of our schools, because they were charter schools, I didn't work for CPS.
Oh, okay.
They were in differentiated buildings.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome.
I liked it over there. I loved Jeffrey Manor the most, but did a little stint in Austin for a while as well. And it was great. The first year was really rough, very eye-opening for me. But as I said in my TED Talk, coming from Jamaica where people are living in a very low level of poverty, I was really grateful that we had classrooms and supplies, and, even if the majority of the time I was buying them. So it was a great experience. I wouldn't have stayed so long if it wasn't. But I worked for a really amazing man, Eric Carlton, and he opened a lot of different charter schools in the south and west side of the city. And he was just such a great mentor, such a positive person, constantly pushing us to take care of ourselves mental health wise,
Mm.
make sure that we were on the right track to be set up for success. So that was super helpful. As you know, Katie, whoever your principal is or the person running it can make or break your whole school year. So I got really lucky. And the people I worked with were insanely passionate. We were all really driven. We were kind of just in it together. Young teachers, you know.
Where did art come into play in your life?
My high school track coach was also the art teacher.
Oh, cool.
And so he definitely took me under his wing. They made up art classes for me because they ran out of them. But I pretty much lived in the art room in high school. But in college, I was gearing more towards science and education.
Mhm.
And art just kind of was a thing that I did on the side. So I was never really, I didn't go to an art school. I went to an education-based small school.
Did you ever think that you would be using art as a way, like a way of living?
No.
How did that come back? How did that passion come back?
Well, when I was teaching, a lot of times when we would get really stressed in the classrooms, the security guards would take the kids outside. And I had one security guard, his name was Mansa, and he would usually take the kids, play basketball or something, and give me a break. And during those breaks is when I started kind of creating again, after probably half a decade of not really focusing on it. And I toddled around with it, but I was still really full-time into the teaching. We lost a few of our contracts for the schools, so I began waitressing on the side as well. And then ultimately I waitressed full-time to save up to open an art gallery that was also an educational space. So it gave me the freedom to still teach art. And we worked a lot in tutoring after school with ADHD students and how to implement creative practices. And I started representing local artists in Pilsen. And we had a new art show every month. I didn't even show my work at all, and I wasn't creating anything. And then it finally got to a point where I was like, okay, well, a lot of stuff I see, I could probably do that. So I started creating again and slowly built the confidence to talk about my art, show my art. And then ultimately now, not really care if you don't like it or not.
That's awesome.
So,
How
yeah.
long did it take you to build that confidence?
It's a multifaceted thought process for me. There's the false confidence, the fake it till you believe it portion of it. For sure, that was in the beginning. Like, isn't this great? I've never been really good at tooting my own horn. So I think that held me back for a lot of those years of just kind of being shy about showing it.
Sure.
And then through every creative process, you start to untangle all the bones of your insecurities, why your creations aren't making you happy, why you're unsatisfied with them, why you want to lay them down and not get them back out. And once you kind of work through all those different processes, which is different for everybody, I just finally got to a point where I loved creating so much, and I really loved sharing it with other people so much. It made me so happy that it was just like, I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you don't like my style of teaching.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Meg, when I talked with you previously, you had said this amazing quote that I still love. You said, I love my creative life more than I love cooperating with my own oppression. I just, tell us more, because that is a very powerful statement. And it resonated really, really well with me, with loving that creative life more and that just tell me more. Sorry, I have questions.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite quotes. It's written by my bed. I learned a lot through representing other artists and working with other creatives like yourselves. The hardest thing, oh, sorry, someone's calling me. Hey, not right now. The hardest thing for me was I was so driven and motivated. If I'm going to make something work, it's going to work. And working with, so many different creatives, they have great ideas. They might be really brilliant. but they just can't get out of bed, or they just can't drop a really bad habit, or there's always an excuse or something in the way. And I felt like in the beginning, I was also making up those excuses. I don't have the money to open a gallery. I'm single. Who's going to help me? There were like all these different excuses. And then finally, it just got to a point where I realized that that was me oppressing myself, and I wasn't living my own life. And a lot of that really is just, I had found myself, especially in education, forced into unnatural situations that was oppressing me, that I was pleasing unnatural things, and not really listening to what I should be doing. So, you know, at any time I could say, oh, I can't paint, my shoulder hurts, or I can just, you know, work it out.
Sure.
So, and my creative life is something that I've really had to fight for, because it's not easy, especially as a female. So it's just me recognizing it's super important to me, to, when I wake up, know that, okay, today my creative life is going to enhance and bring joy, and I'm not going to feed into any of the negative, yucky stuff. So
I think that's what something like a lot of women can relate to, as far as feeling like, you know, when it comes to the confidence thing, that they're not good enough to show off whatever work they have, or being creative. And I think for a lot of women, being creative is luxury, whether it's working out, painting, pottery, whatever. Like if you're a single mom, you got to put food on the table. Like that's number one. That's not, like, being creative is a luxury. I think a lot of women probably see things as.
absolutely. And at the time when I opened my second gallery, I was, as a single person, I would be up at 4:30 opening the gym from 5 until 9. Then from 9:30 until 1, I would be teaching. Then from 1:30 until midnight, I would be at the gallery. And there were so many times when people would walk in my gallery and they would be like, who's your husband? Who's paying for this? Because it is definitely viewed that way. And you can't offend me if you try. I can understand that would be seen as, okay, this is a hobby and somebody's helping support it. It's not a real business that's lucrative.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's definitely a luxury, and it's something that I take super serious, because I've tried to do other things and they just really don't make me happy.
Yeah. Meg, we also talked a lot about, so you went from a teacher to this art studio, but some of the failures that you've hit along the way, and I've experienced that as well. And doing them as a single woman makes it so much harder. Could you share a little bit about what that's been like for you, and having this art as something that you can turn back to?
Well, I don't really think of it as being a single woman. It's harder than being a married woman. Like you said, you're the queen of transition, and I'm constantly transitioning and evolving to, again, what is my gut saying? When is it time to stop being stubborn and give up on a project? Because I'll ride it like a dead horse because I believe in it so much, So, but, there were times when I wasn't single throughout my career, and some of them I was single. I think that it's easier for me to make decisions alone. I've not found that partner yet that can support and make those decisions with me. But I mean, the biggest failures were just really financial. The first gallery, we did really well with classes because those sip and paints were popular.
Oh, right.
But I can only teach so many people drinking wine painting before it just, again, became like beating a dead horse. Like, I don't want to, I'm ready for the next thing.
Sure.
And the art is just, it's not a necessity. People don't look at art as a necessity. It's also a luxury. And a lot of people don't understand how the art market works. They don't understand the importance of supporting local artists as opposed to buying something from, say, Hobby Lobby. They will invest money in other things that I find very mindless, but not in it. So it was hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around how to sell it, how to move it. And when the first gallery closed, I opened a second one. And it wasn't financially lucrative enough. It was downtown in Fulton Market. Google had just come in across the street. So rent was going up, and there was just no way I could do it on my own. And like I said, I was burnt out. I was working 3 jobs and it wasn't fun anymore. And I went months without creating anything. So again, going back to that, like, what is the goal?
How do you pull yourself away from a project that you feel is no longer serving you? Like, okay, you had to close one of your art studios. So how does that decision go through your head?
Well,
I think it's hard for women to call it quits on certain things.
Yeah, I mean,
passion.
I feel like anytime, again, if I'm taking myself seriously, if I feel anything suffocating my passion or my drive, I begin to immediately evaluate, okay, what am I getting from this? And how much am I giving back? Like when I was teaching, I felt like what I got in return was the pride and the joy of, my students graduating or, certain things. I don't really feel like they gave back anything. I wasn't getting paid very much, and again, you just have to kind of put that in the back shoulder. You're doing it for your own self and the own good, and then it got to a point where that was suffocating. I was 29 years old. I'm like, I want my own babies one day. I can't keep taking care of everybody else's babies. And so that just got to a point where it was really suffocating. And like I said, the first art gallery became suffocating because I had represented so many artists. And again, I didn't feel like those artists, not all of them, but the majority of them, were taking and not giving. And that's when I kind of decided, okay, it's time for me to do what I want to do. But I didn't have the financial means or the stability to hold that up. So
I love that you said you had to take a step back and look at what Meg wanted to do, because so many times I think women are just so worried about everyone else but us. And that's why it takes so long to get out of things like work, a business, relationships. Girl, if I could tell you how many times I should have asked myself, like, what are you getting out of this relationship? I would have been, it said I date that man for 3 more years, hoping I get something out, and I never do. But, oh my God.
Yeah, I've done that in many relationships.
I've done it in a relationship and a business. Meg, which one is harder to walk away from?
Ooh, it's a good question.
Well, I think they're different. Because I've never been a person who said, okay, I'm going to open this business and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I made that mistake. I believed that was the place and that was what I was going to do. I guess that it made it harder. I would vote. They are different. You're 100% right. I would say.
It depends on which business too.
Yeah.
Some of them I was so much more invested in. Like when I moved home to Ohio 3 years ago, I was so invested in that business, making it work. I was so naive to thinking that people were just going to fall in love with art and value it over football. I mean, so I was super invested in that. And then I was super invested in a serious relationship while I was home. So again, it's always different where you're at too, the environment of the people you're around versus the city. I felt like it was pretty easy because it can be transient. Like, okay, Katie and I used to CrossFit together. And then Katie moved out to the burbs and opened a CrossFit gym. It wasn't like I was heartbroken that I didn't get to see you at the gym. No offense. Of course I was. But in the city, I don't think that the relationships are as deep as with your family and the people that you grew up with. So I don't know. I mean, it depends on the relationship. And it depends on the business. Some of them didn't hurt at all.
Either way, loss is hard. And you have reinvented and bounced back. and you just really believe in yourself, and it's amazing. And I know the older that I get, I feel like, man, do I have it in me? Do I have it in me? What keeps
you do?
You're absolutely right. I do. I called you and you're like, yes, you do. What keeps you going?
What's that?
What keeps you going? What helps you bounce back time and time again?
Oh, that's an easy one. What's the other option?
Exactly.
Not get out of bed. I mean, I've been through times where I didn't want to get out of bed, and I get out of bed and I wash my hair and I put my makeup on and get dressed up for myself. I mean,
Yes, girl.
I have an endless amount of, I believe, especially for you, Kristen, for you, Katie, at one point it has to work, because it's not fair if it doesn't. Like, you know, you see authors that are published, 44 years old. You think she just started writing yesterday? Like, you know, a lot of the success, some people get really lucky when they're young, and a lot of it has to do with luck. But I feel like there's no way I can't win if I keep working really hard at it. So just try a different way. Try a different way. I always said to my students, they would ask me a question, and if I didn't understand it, I would say, okay, say it a different way, because the communication might have just been lost.
Right.
If they said it a different way, sometimes it would take them 3-4 times to say it before I'd be like, oh, that's what you're asking me. But that's kind of how I view, you know, my everyday life. It's like, oh, that's not working. Okay, what's the next way? Divergent. Let's go.
Right. I love that you said, like, just try a different way until you reach your goal.
Yeah.
I mean, it can take forever, but if you don't stop, then you never know what can happen.
Right. I love that.
Well, and what my goals were last year are not the same as what my goals are today. You know,
Totally.
but because I keep going, it just transitions and evolves into a new thing. So it's the opposite of giving up, even if it's not the same end result you thought of in the beginning.
Love that.
Meg, with all of the stuff that you've been through your whole life, you just have such an incredible story. What would you say your superpower is?
Resilience.
Love
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Like not being afraid to try, and you're like just trusting that it's going to work out it's incredible. I just did a Katie Reed's thing, and I talked about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I asked people, have you ever felt fearful and done it anyways? And 87% of people said no.
Really?
Yeah. And it really surprised me. And what's cool is I get to see who said no, right? It was really interesting to see. And I'm like, does that mean you've never been afraid? But yeah, I was surprised. Just being here with 3 women right now who I know all 3 of you have absolutely been afraid of something, and you've done it anyway.
I'm still afraid. Like, I just did a post today because I've traveled so much now post-stroke, and a lot of people have asked like how I do it because they're really afraid, because it can be really daunting to have a weak arm or a weak leg and go into a busy airport, like pull your luggage, and you know, sometimes you need help with like the littlest things. Like the first time I needed help with like buckling my belt, and I think God, the universe, placed me in the middle of these 2 women. They were so kind. The one lady's like, oh, I'll help you. And I mean, my personality is not to shine away from that. I'm like, buckle me in. She was so sweet, but I feel like I've always found people like that on my way. And I had written today about telling like stroke survivors, like, if you're afraid, you want your life back, you got to do it anyways, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. So now I'm back to like traveling's no big deal. Like, it's fine. I used to before go in like a half hour before. I'm like, I'll make the flight. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there. It's like closer and closer to my time to board. I just hate waiting there. But I also talked about how a TSA agent, because I used to have like heavy tones, my arm used to kind of prop up a little bit, and I didn't have real control over it. She kept being like, man, put your arm down. And it was like so embarrassing. And finally I just snapped it. I was like, I'm paralyzed. And she was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I was like, I was so pissed. And then I never had a problem with TSA ever again. I just think like I told the universe, like, enough, do not mess with me when I travel. And I've never had problems since. I even got through without an ID one time, so it's fine. But if I stopped traveling because I was afraid, I'd still be in Denver living by myself.
Yeah.
You just
No,
gotta
I
push
can
through the
believe
fear.
That's amazing.
Meg, what's next for you that you might be afraid of that you're going to do anyway?
Oh, I'm terrified of this podcast.
What terrifies you?
Well, the vulnerability of it. The
Mm.
book that I'm writing right now is memoir based, and it's very vulnerable. Terrified of that.
It's your superpower. You have a powerful story to share.
Yeah.
I just push into resilience.
Love that.
Because I know that if something's making, like when I did that TED Talk, I had this amazing friend, Brad, who helped me with everything. And he was like, okay, well, what's the problem? Because we're getting down to the wire of like a month. And I was so terrified. And he was like, okay, you're not scared. You're excited. That's excited energy. And you're turning it into something else in your head. Like you're finally really excited about something. If I would have told you just to come over and hang out and have a conversation, you wouldn't be scared. So like use that energy and like don't think of it as a fear. So I always go with that because I was terrified. We did the run through and I cried within the first 3 minutes. It was terrible. And then I did not do the speech that I had prepared. I just went completely off the cuff. And, you know, I've never been more terrified. But after it was done, it was like,
Did it. Yeah, but you did it, and now you can tell everyone you did it. It's amazing. If you, after everything you've been through, if you could go back and give your young Meg any advice, what would you say to her?
exactly what you said earlier. When I recognize in a relationship that it's not feeding me, to just learn to walk away and understand that somebody else is going to feed that person and it's not my responsibility.
Yes, I love that.
Not my responsibility.
I just got to take care of me because I'm of no good to anybody else if I'm not taking care of me.
That's right.
Girl,
Girl, you got a lot going on.
I will say amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Absolutely. Meg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I
hope we helped you with the vulnerability and the podcast and seeing that you did great. And it's,
awesome.
A conversation with a computer screen with people.
It's so weird talking on a computer screen to me.
You get used to it.
Yeah.
What's funny is that Kristen and I, so we're going to be reunited in person in the flesh on Tuesday. We haven't seen each other since 2014.
It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
We are like 30 episodes into a podcast and we haven't actually physically seen each other since 2013.
Crazy.
So
he knows, like, we know each other's like deepest, darkest secrets. Haven't seen each other in 6 years. No big deal.
Like when I met her, I was like falling in love with Dan and like wanting to start a podcast.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meg. It was so nice to meet you.
Before we go, Meg, we're going to tell people where they can follow you, and then we're going to tell them where they can follow us. Where can people follow you?
My website is officialmegfraizer.com. And my Instagram is Meg Fraizer Creates.
Awesome.
Awesome.
We'll definitely follow you, and we'll post so our viewers can follow you as well. Our listeners. Sorry, I'm so used to saying viewers, 10 years. And don't forget, if you guys listen, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Outstanding Women Leaders on all the platforms. And we are now on Apple Podcasts, so please make sure to go and subscribe to Apple Podcasts and Podbean and leave us a little review of what you think of the podcast. We really appreciate it so much, and we'll start reading them on the show. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for coming on, Meg.
Thanks, Meg.
Bye.